Hello, and a big warm welcome to the Guardian Doula's Diary podcast. My name is Angela Deuce, and I'm your host and the founder of Guardian Doula. I am a certified birth and postpartum doula and childbirth educator based on Sydney's Northern Beaches and serving women and families all throughout Sydney. This podcast is an honest collection of the stories and experiences of birthing women and the professionals that support them to empower, equip, and inspire us all. Let's get into it. In this episode, I interview Kate, who I had the joy of supporting as her doula. Kate shares the story of her beautiful water birth, chats about what it was like to have a doula and the specific benefits that she gained from that support, and she shares about her transition into motherhood and the challenges and joys that brought for her. Here's our conversation. Enjoy! Do you want to just kick us off and tell us about yourself?
Yes, I would love to. So my name is Kate Brown, which is a really easy name to spell, so go me. I am 27, nearly 28. I'm married to the most wonderful man I've ever met, obviously. His name is Mitch. Mitch and I, we were married for 5 years before we got pregnant, and we had a gorgeous baby boy in January last year. So Levi is 17 months tomorrow. So most of what I do during the week is hanging out with him. We're a little team. We hang out and I teach high school English 2 days a week. So that's kind of me. And I love Jesus. I should say that as well. And I always say to Levi, I'm like, you're my third favorite. Like, I love Jesus the most, and I love Daddy, and then I love you, which doesn't mean that I love him any less, but I really like Jesus is my whole thing. So love Jesus. We love our church. We go to Vineyard Church in the Hawkesbury, which is so much fun. I love reading. I love my yoga. I was actually thinking about what I was going to say about myself on the podcast, and I was like, oh, is it really lame to say that I also love being at home? Like, I love tidying and cleaning and organizing, and yeah, I'm a bit of a homebody, but being a parent, that kind of works.
So good. So good. I can't believe how fast that time has flown. That's insane that he's already so big.
I know. He's such a toddler. Like, it's just something, the switch flips at 1 year and he's just walking and talking and playing, and it's so much fun. He's so fun.
Oh, little Levi. Such a sweet little boy.
He is. He's the best. Yeah, he's such a character. So much personality in like such a little body, which is great.
So good. Okay, I am so excited to get into your birth story and all the things. And obviously, I was your doula, so I do know your birth story. But it's always so great to just, I think it's really awesome for women who had such positive birth stories like yours to just share, so that it really takes the fear away from other women who might be, thinking about having their first baby, or maybe their first baby's on the way and they're a little bit nervous or a bit apprehensive. Like, I just think it's so encouraging when you hear stories from real other human beings who have actually experienced birth and enjoyed it and have, positive things to say. So I'm very excited to get into that and to ask you all about that. But first, I'd love to know, what made you decide to hire a doula?
Yes, and it's so funny because I had never heard of a doula, I think, until I watched this really amazing YouTube series. So of course it was YouTube that really inspired me, but I followed this influencer for ages, and her husband is Chinese. And when they got pregnant, she said she wanted to do Chinese confinement. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is that? And basically, in traditional Chinese culture, after the baby is born, they have the doula come in. Traditionally, it's like your mother-in-law, but nowadays people will just hire like a professional doula, and they call it a puyet, which is like a nanny. And they come and they really focus on taking care of the mum for 4 weeks after the baby is born. Anyway, so I watched, and if anyone wants to look it up, it was the best series. It's the YouTuber's name is Taylor R, like the letter R. And she just did this amazing like deep dive into like postpartum care and like maternal health. And I was just so fascinated. And I knew that my family don't live close by. My parents and all my family live overseas. And I knew my husband's family were going to live close, but there's something different about, getting care from your husband's family versus your own family. So I was thinking, oh my gosh, what can I take from this, beautiful Chinese confinement practice? Like, it sounds like it's going to tick so many boxes for me, but I just didn't really know how that was going to work. And then Mitch told me that his friend Angela Juice is a doula, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And I remember obviously you weren't there, Angie, but Mitch and I were in the car and we were talking about it, and we had decided that we did think a doula was going to kind of meet what we needed from the situation, right? Like we never had a baby before. So we really wanted someone to be there who could support us in the birth because it's brand new. Like my mum couldn't be there. We weren't totally sure how things were going to work after we had the baby with care and stuff. And we thought, wouldn't it be nice if we could actually get a doula who's a professional and isn't a family member? Because then there's no strings attached. Like we really thought that would be so perfect to have someone come in who knows what they're doing, who could love and care for us, but we didn't have to then like overly thank them or like see them at family lunch and know that they kind of know really how we're going. Like we just thought it'd be perfect. And Mitch said, oh, my friend Angie's a doula, and I literally said, I was like, no, she's too hot, like I can't have anyone that beautiful and that put together like come and take
Oh
care of
my
me. Like I was
goodness.
straight up. And Mitch was like, okay, let's just submit for a little bit. And then over time I was like, okay, no, like let's just think about it a bit more. And I think as I got more pregnant, I got more comfortable with the idea of like giving birth, having someone there, because I was super nervous about that. I was like, okay, I don't know what's going to happen. First baby, I really don't know. But really, it was that I wanted that emotional support, the emotional coaching. I was really keen on that. And I really just didn't know what was going to happen. And I wanted someone who did know what postpartum was like with me all the time, someone who I didn't have to see as my sister-in-law or anything. Like I wanted a doula. I just wanted the doula. Once I learned about what a doula was, I wanted one. So yeah, it was really those two things. Like it was knowing you personally and also watching this lady do this amazing video series like about the importance of taking care of new moms, and it was so great. So that's really what pushed us over the edge, and I'm so grateful. It was so fantastic having you there. It was awesome.
Oh, that's so good to hear. I have to go back to what you said about like, I just can't have Ange because she's just too put together and too whatever. You
It's
are,
true.
it's not, you're crazy. But do you know what? I think it's actually so common that you feel this like sense of self-consciousness. Like you're like, I'm going to be so vulnerable and there's just going to be someone there who is going to be seeing me in all my vulnerability, in all my naked glory. Like it can be a really big thing. And I think it's totally normal that that's a really big thing. And you almost just have to remind yourself that the same way that like it's, really awkward going for I don't know, let's say you're super early pregnant and you need to go for like an internal ultrasound and you're like, oh my gosh, that's just the most mortifying, embarrassing thing. But it's like that sonographer sees women's bodies like that all day, every day. Like they're just so used to it. And it's the exact same thing as a doula. Like it's like the midwives, they see naked women constantly and they're just used to it. Like they don't even really bat an eyelash. It's just like another day at work. And it's so the same for a doula. Like honestly, I don't even get like if I'm at a birth and then all of a sudden the mum like hits transition, which is that common moment where you hit
Oh,
transition and
I
you're like,
remember. Oh,
yes,
yeah.
you just want to rip your clothes off. You're so uncomfortable, and you like when that moment happens and I'm at a birth and I turn around and all of a sudden someone's just butt naked. I don't even notice anymore. It's almost like I'm just like it doesn't even I don't even go, "Oh." Like I think I'm just so used to it. So to anyone listening who feels that sense of being a little bit shy or a bit self-conscious or a bit nervous, like can I just assure you that it's not even a thing, and you probably also in the moment won't even care anymore when you're in labor and it's happening like
Exactly.
yeah.
Yes, and I think you're so right, and that's what I didn't expect. I assumed that I would be the Kate that I knew the whole time, and I think that's what really shocked me is that in labor, like, I don't know if it was a brand new side of me or a side of me that had never been able to come out before, but you do drop into this, and it must just be some genetic coding, right? That like, we have as women, we have this amazing potential that you get to see when you become a mum. And I remember literally at one point being in the birthing pool, being completely naked, and Mitch is in there too, and he said something like, the water's really clear, Kate. Like everything's great. And I was like, it's not. I can see it. I can see that there's stuff everywhere, and I'm naked. But it wasn't sending me crazy like I thought it would. Like if right now, if I hadn't had all those hours of labor preparing for that, if I was thrown in that situation now, I'd go, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming. But at the time, I was like, no, this is exactly what I want to be doing. My body's telling me to do this. My body's saying it's okay. It's a safe place. And just a safe person. Like all of those things made me ready, and I couldn't have known that until it happened. Like I was really able to trust my body to do that. and you were obviously exactly the right person to have there, and it was exactly the right situation. So luckily it was all really great, and I never felt unsafe. Or yeah, and I just, yeah, I think I thought I would feel unsafe and vulnerable, but I actually felt safe, and I really wanted you there. I remember holding your hand, not Mitch's hand, although Mitch was there. But I remember leaning over, and I think we have a video of it, and I'm holding your hand over the edge of the bath. I was like, Ange, I need you. I need you. And I need Mitch in completely different ways. Like, I need Mitch to be here as a dad, and I need you to be here for me as I'm becoming a mum. Like, it was so different than I expected. But I'm just grateful that we had the doula thing ready, like before, you know, like you can't go back and have a doula after you've had your baby. I mean, you can have the postpartum care, but yeah, we really needed it for the labor actually. And it was awesome. It was so great.
Yeah, I think you guys are such a beautiful example of a couple that has a really, really strong, solid relationship and then still, went to get that extra support. Like you talked about, I love that analogy of like, there's no strings attached. I'm not going to see you at family lunch and have you know everything about me and the things that, if you feel a little bit more private about your experience and you don't really want necessarily somebody who's part of your everyday life to see that, then it's such a nice little safe place, almost like when you go see a psychologist and you're like, you're totally removed from the rest of my life. Like, it's just there's something safe about that, I think. And the strings attached thing is huge as well, because oftentimes women will tell me, like, because often people still want the doula, even if they do have their mum or their mother-in-law, whoever, like 5 minutes up the road. And women will say, like, gosh, I'm so glad that even though I have the family support, I also have you, because it's different when a family member comes over. And it can sometimes feel like there are those strings attached where it's like, I don't know, you feel like you have to make them a cup of tea or offer them to hold the baby, or it's a little bit about them. Whereas when it's a doula who, like, it's a paid professional, they're literally there because that's their job, to take care of you. And there's absolutely none of the, like, oh, do you want a cup of tea? Oh, have you eaten lunch? Oh, I just need to tidy up the house. Oh, do you want a cuddle of the baby? Like, it's all about the mum, and it's different. Like, it really is different.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And like that whole time, I was just like nodding at everything. So I was like, yes, yes, yes. And I think, and I also didn't even anticipate, and it wasn't my job to anticipate this, but like I remember Mitch's mom, I really watched her become a grandmother, and it took a while. Like I love her and she's amazing, but like there was an element of when she came over, I assumed, you know, naively, I was like, okay, well, she's here to help me, right? Like and I know she would have said that out loud. She would have said, yeah, I'm coming over to help. But what I see in hindsight is she was coming over to start her relationship with Levi. Like, and so I think if I had had that kind of dynamic in labor, like if I had been kind of thinking, you know, my mom's becoming a grandmother right now, like she has her own emotional expectations of what this is going to feel like, what it's going to look like I wouldn't have been able to just focus on me. And that's my job, right? Like as a mom, your job is to be a mom. It's not to be a therapist for your mother-in-law. It's not your job to be, you know, the in-between for your mum and your baby. Like at that moment, you actually do need all your emotional resources into being a mum. And so that, yeah, you're totally right. With a doula, you can actually do that. You can have those boundaries and you can go, oh, amazing, I'm not offering her a cup of tea. Or if I do, I can do that because I have the energy to. There's no expectation. She's not going to remember it and bring it up one day weirdly. You can, yeah. And just like a therapist, you have your own kind of special vulnerability with them that you don't need to have with anybody else. So you get that really intense connection that you can kind of close the door on when you're ready and go, okay, beautiful. I'm out of that postpartum, you know, really fresh postpartum season. Now I'm moving on into being, you know, work Kate, family Kate, whatever I need to be. Like it was so helpful to be able to kind of compartmentalize that and then put myself back together and kind of get back to normal life after a few months. Like it took me a while, but yeah, it was so helpful. It was awesome.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful. And it does take a while. It's like the biggest life change, one of the biggest life changes that you'll ever experience, becoming a mum, you know? So it
Mm.
totally makes sense that it takes a long time to wrap your head around that, to wrap your heart around that, to recover physically, emotionally. Like, it's a huge process. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think honestly, it's taken, I mean, I don't know how long it took for me to really get over the kind of adrenaline of it as well. And I think that was when, and I know like one of the things we were kind of chatting about before was like, um, yeah, like when, like postpartum journey, you know, kind of looking back on that. And I was like, yeah, like I think there was a while that really felt postpartum for me. It felt like I'm becoming a mum, I'm becoming a mum. And I don't know when it was that I just felt like I just was a mum, that I was just doing it, but I was also me at the same time. Like it didn't completely take over my life, but it wasn't none of my life, like it was before I had kids. But I think it took me like, I want to say like I really came up for air after Levi started sleeping through the night. Like all before that, it felt like a juggle. Like I kind of had to like put lots of things on pause to do the parenting, or put the parenting on pause to do other things. And I
Yeah.
think it took a lot longer than I think a lot of my friends did. A lot of my friends who had babies at the same time, their babies were sleeping through the night 5, 6 months. Levi didn't sleep through the night till he was like 11 months. Christmas morning was the first night he had slept through the night. We woke up on Christmas, we'd slept through. So yeah, it took me a really long time. And I remember talking to someone, actually I ended up going to Tresillian twice for the sleep stuff. And at Tresillian, they do a little GP checkup just for the mums. Like they don't even let you bring your baby in to the office. They have someone watch your baby for you and they check up on you. And the lady said, okay, tell me about birth, pregnancy, and breastfeeding. And I was like, they're all beautiful, not an issue. And she was like, oh my gosh, Kate, that is like the holy trinity. No one gets all three. And I was like, yes, but he doesn't sleep. So, it's not like it was completely easy, but like it was,
Yeah.
yeah, there's so many parts to it. And so it affects you in so many different ways. But I was so grateful that even though being a parent has been so challenging and absolutely pushed me to my limit, I didn't have a bunch of trauma from giving birth to add to that. Like I didn't need that. Goodness gracious, I did not need that. I didn't know what we were in for, but at least I wasn't walking in going, oh my gosh, birth totally kicked me in the butt. And now I'm on the back foot. I really felt like I started with Levi with my cup full, with my house full of love and joy, with you, baking me postpartum cookies. Like it was so beautiful to start as ready as I could be, because I didn't know we were going to have a sleep storm on our hands. And you can't know that when you're pregnant. You can't know that when you're giving birth. So it was really nice to do pregnancy, beautiful, that's done. Birth, beautiful, that's done. And then move into newborn life and postpartum recovery at the same time, and learning to breastfeed at the same. There's so many things. So I was so grateful that we chose to invest in the doula like system, so that it just really greased the transition for us and really helped us keep our heads above water as long as we possibly could, before things got really tough with the sleep. So that was really great as well, actually. Yeah.
Oh, that's so incredible. I can't stand when I hear things like that said, like what you were saying about the lady at Tresillian being like, oh, you're so lucky your birth was good. It's so good. Like, it's like, okay, even though the birth was in like inverted commas easy or good, it doesn't mean that it wasn't still really hard, and that it doesn't, don't discredit it just because. Even the other day, it was so funny. I was at a mother's group, and a friend of mine was like recounting her birth story, and she had quite a small baby. I think she weighed only like 2.7 kilos or something. And as she was telling her story, somebody asked her, oh, did you tear? And she was like, no, I didn't. And then later on, it came out that the baby was only 2.7 kilos. And then some other mum was like, oh, no wonder you didn't tear. She was only 2.7 kilos. That's so easy. That would have been so easy. And I just, like,
Oh.
she didn't mean to, like, it was well intentioned, I'm sure. I don't know. But just that comment of like, oh, that's so easy. No wonder you didn't tear. Almost, I just was like, that kind of is taking away from the fact that like she still pushed out
Oh,
a baby. Like,
exactly.
why do we need to undermine that or like retract from it? I just it just like it felt weird. It sat funny with me, and I thought like, why do we have to make comments like that? Like, just because you had a great pregnancy, a great birth, and breastfeeding worked, doesn't mean that like it wasn't a difficult process still, because even if those things go really well, they're still hard, and I feel
Oh,
like it just
so true.
undermines what the mum goes through a little bit. Like, I'm like, there's no such thing as an easy birth. I don't believe that. Like, there's beautiful births, there's great births, there are births that felt empowering and peaceful and wonderful, and births that you love, but it's not easy.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think that like the only reason we hear comments like that is that element of comparison. We go, oh, that's so easy, because I imagine that lady, this is mind reading, but that lady was probably thinking, my baby was bigger and that was hard. And so
Yeah.
comparing, like, your thing sounds easier than my thing. Like if we just take each person's thing on their own, it's so much easier. But I also know now, like I definitely was down the rabbit hole, researching things and asking everyone else what they were doing. There's an element of like research and, you know, hearing other stories, that can be really helpful. But I think when we do that and we go, oh, we're going to put this in a scale, yours is easy, mine's hard, or mine was easy and yours was hard. Like, that's when it gets so toxic. Like, why can't we
Yeah.
share and listen and go, that's your thing? And it cannot compare to my thing, because my thing is mine and yours is yours. Like apples and oranges and lemons and kiwi fruits, like babies are not the same. Even like, I was thinking about what was like the coolest thing about becoming a mum. And I think it was that I fell in love with Levi specifically. Like, I didn't love babies before I got pregnant. I always knew I wanted kids, but I kind of thought that I wouldn't really like enjoy it until he could talk, you know, until he was like walking around. You know, I'm a high school teacher, so I love like intellectual reasoning, emotional literacy, and like, you don't do that really with a newborn. That's
Yeah.
just not what the phase asks for. But like, I remember a few days into being a parent, like Levi must have been like 4 days old, 3 days old, I was changing him and I was just sobbing, being like, I love you. You know, I don't love my friend's baby in the same way I love you. Like, I love your hands, I love your eyes, and I love your little butt. I love all of you. And it's so specific. Like, in the way I don't love husbands, I love my husband only. Like, I don't love babies in the same way I love my Levi specifically. And I think that was really helpful to go, oh my gosh, like, yeah, I can't compare you to these other babies, you know, who might sleep better or feed worse or whatever. There's no
Yeah.
point. Like, I'm no one else's parent at the moment. I'm just yours. And you have captured my heart. Like, I have not only chosen to love you because I made you in your mind, like, you have absolutely won my affection over. And I would literally be a human shield for you. I don't care what would happen. I would put myself behind your needs any day of the week that I could. Like, you are so precious to me. And so it's so, yeah, I just think that, yeah, that idea that like, we can talk about, you know, maternal health or babies or whatever in a really general way and put things in a scale just doesn't work. We need to be so specific and so individual. And every mum is so different. Every baby is so different. Every birth is so different. Like, it can be a bit competitive, but it doesn't need to be. We don't need to see it like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, but it is so important to share. Like, I even find that so healing now. I caught it with a friend this morning. We were just talking about like, yeah, different seasons of being parents now that we have been parents for more than 5 minutes. And it's so helpful to talk to people and to share and feel heard. And but I think there's a point where you can switch over and go, oh, now I just feel inadequate. Now I feel like invalidated. And that's really, really hurtful, and really
Yeah.
poisonous. It can really, really take over. So yeah, it's so important to share and be heard, but to also guard your own heart and go, okay, when do I need to stop? When do I just need to go, gosh, I'm doing a good job, just me right now, because that's all that matters. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's really tricky.
I think it's one of those things that, I mean, so many things in life are like this, where two things are true at the same time, and it's about balancing them. Like, it's really helpful to confide in other mums and chat to other mums about their experiences, because you do feel more understood and you can get alongside one another and support one another, and you feel, oh gosh, I'm not in this alone. And that's really helpful and really beautiful and really important. But then, like, the other side of that coin is that it can sometimes tip over into comparison, and it can get competitive and really toxic, like you talked about. And it's just like, it's unfortunate, because confiding in one another and cheering one another on is so important. But then, yeah, the competition and the comparison is so toxic. So it's just a balance, I guess.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think like that, being able to hold that balance in your emotional mind, you know, like it's hard and it's important, or, you know, it's both validating and kind of difficult at the same time. Like, that's such
Yeah.
a great kind of ability for your brain to have, because parenting is a lot like that sometimes. That you like I felt like my birth was beautiful and really challenging. And I was trying to think about, like, if I had to summarize it in like a word, I would say like cathartic. Like, it was really rewarding, but it really hurt to get there. And I remember feeling that really specifically when I held Levi, like, and I had such a tear. Like, I think they called it, what, a severe third degree tear, a third degree severe tear. Like, it was a lot of tearing. And so, and I knew what was going on. Like, it really, really, really hurt at that very last moment. But as soon as I held him, you know, in that, like, you know, 2 seconds between feeling like I was actually ripped in half and him being on my chest, as soon as I held him, I was like, that's fine, I'll do it again. And I remember that so clearly. And I was like, wow, how did that go? How could it be so painful and so rewarding at the same time? And I think that was actually really, you know, God very graciously introduced me to a lot of parenting like that. Like, it can be so hard and it's so worth it. And, you know, oh my gosh, this is an eternal investment. Like, I'm caring for my beautiful child who I love, who will, you know, do amazing things. And I'm part of his story. I'm so blessed to be part of it. And also, it's really hard. And every single day on its own can be really tough, but it's also worth it at the same time. So I think, yeah, being able to hold those things in your mind that feel impossible, that like both things are true, this and that, not this or that, um, is a skill that comes in handy in a few different places, which is nice.
Yeah. Yeah. This and that, not this or that. It's so true.
Mm.
I love that. Okay. Well, I feel like we are jumping ahead a little bit. I'm getting too excited. But can you tell us the birth story? Do you want to just start from wherever you want to start from and just
Yes.
lay it on us? I'm so excited to
Oh,
hear you recount it.
oh, and I even had to kind of remind myself of some of it because it feels like it's been a very long time. It really hasn't, but it did feel like a long time ago. So this was January 2023. Um, I was overdue. Like Levi's due date came and went. Not a contraction, no Braxton Hicks, nothing. Like I was feeling completely normal, and I was like, okay, this feels weird. And I was really, really worried about being induced. I really didn't want to have a chemical induction. I'd done some kind of reading and some research into it, and I was like, okay, I don't really want to start labor like that. Like I don't want my body before it's ready to be kind of pushed to be ready. So that was my main fear. And I remember crying every day that Levi was overdue, mostly because I was ready to meet him, but also because I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want a bunch of interventions in my birth. Like I really want it to work just the way my body's ready for it to work. So I was 40, it must have been 41 weeks on to the day. And I had my appointment at the hospital. I was really lucky. And we had the midwife come to our house for all the prenatal appointments. But I had my 41-week checkup at the hospital, and they offered a stretch and sweep. And I was really, I had done some research into that, so I knew what they were asking. I knew it was intense, but I was really keen to try it because I knew it was a non-hormonal way of getting things going on. I didn't want them to inject me with a bunch of things. They were just gonna basically try and separate. When you'll have to correct my words if I say it wrong, but kind of separate like the membrane from my cervix. So they were like, it was pretty invasive. And I remember poor Mitch watching me lie there as this lady very vigorously kind of scraped away at my cervix. So I
Yeah.
think that was actually one of the most intense moments of giving birth because she was doing it to me, this doctor who did a great job, but it wasn't my body doing it on its own. Like she was kind of getting things started. So that was
Mm,
intense. But it was really helpful because she actually stepped outside of the curtain and we heard her say to another nurse, oh, this lady's having her baby today or tomorrow. Like, and she basically came back to explain that there had been, she called it bloody show. Like there had been some kind of blood up there that was good, productive blood. And she
yeah.
said, this means that you were basically ready anyway. So I was like, okay, amazing. Like it seemed like she had gotten things moving, but also my body was pretty ready. So she literally said to this lady, like, we'll see. She said, I'll book you in for an induction. I think it was a Saturday. She said, I'll book you in for induction on Wednesday, but I'm very sure we'll see you before then. So she sent us home and she said, you'll expect some cramping. So just keep an eye out for that, see how you're going. And because I don't know exactly what prompted us to do it, but we had the car when we went to this appointment, our 41-week appointment. We had the car fully packed up. Like I'd made a bunch of meals. I had made like a bunch of tea, like breastfeeding tea that was all packed up, ready to go. So we said, let's make this a dress rehearsal for going to hospital. We had everything packed up. We had our hospital bag ready, good to go. So we ended up driving home with all that stuff still in the car, but and I had felt some cramping on the way home, and the cramping actually never stopped. Like I think the cramping turned straight into contractions because we came home and left the car packed up because I was feeling pretty uncomfortable. And then over the course of the afternoon, I was like, okay, these aren't like random cramps, like these are proper contractions now. So we started timing them and we called you. You were the first person we called, obviously. So we called you and we said, oh my gosh, like today's the day. But we hung out at home for really as long as we could. I don't think we called the hospital either. We were just watching it, keeping on what was going. I think I did text my midwife, but which was so fantastic. Like he went into real dad mode and real husband mode. He was like, Kate, we're going to put on your favorite movie. Let's get the heat pack out. Like, let's just be so relaxed. So he put on Shrek 2 and, it was at this point, I think we were sure it was maybe about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I think Angie came at about like 7, like kind of in the evening, like it was after dinner. So the contractions were kind of on and off. And I remember when you came, things actually kind of slowed down, not in timing, but in intensity. I remember you saying something like, oh, it might be a bit of like, kind of like labor stage fright. Like my body's like, oh, someone's here. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like maybe we'll just read the room, and your body reassesses. And that was so fascinating because it is such a primal experience. Like you turn into this like fight, flight, or freeze kind of thing, it just becomes so sensitive. And that whole idea that, in the past, women would have been giving birth potentially, in a much more hazardous environment than we do now. Like, I really felt
Mm.
that. So it was lovely to be at home. We had all the candles burning. Every candle in the house was on, which was so nice. And we were hanging out. And then I think at about 9 o'clock, contractions were still really regular. It was like definitely nighttime. And Mitch was like, maybe we should have a little snooze. And I just wanted to have this baby, right? I was not keen on sleeping at all, but I was like, okay,
Yeah.
we'll try. And I did fall asleep, which I was shocked at, because like the contractions did hurt. Like, I was walking around, I couldn't sit still through them anymore. I was kind of pacing the room, but we both fell asleep for, it must have been like 3 hours. Like, I think I woke up about midnight and I felt nothing, right? So I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh, no more contractions. Oh my gosh, am I still pregnant? Like, what's happening? And I was so discouraged. Like, I remember walking out into the living room and you were here, and I was like, Angie, there's nothing. Like, I have I slept it off? Have I like, should I have stayed awake and told my body it was time? Like, what's going on? And then my waters broke out of nowhere, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, what is this? And I thought I was peeing myself, and I was like, why would I do that? Like, that's very strange. And then kind of out of nowhere, waters broken, and then I was in transition. It felt like right away, and that
Yeah.
sucked. Oh my gosh, looking back, that was the worst. And I'm glad we were already going to the hospital when I was in transition, because I don't think I could have gotten in the car if I had been any more in transition. Like, I had found the labor contraction stage much easier, because it does really hurt, but then you get a break and you go, okay, catch my breath, sit down, have a sip of water, like, I'm ready to go, here's another one, and you ride the wave. Transition, there was like no waves, no breaks. Like, it felt like just 9 out of 10 pain. I remember not even being able to sit on the seat with my seatbelt on. Like, I was facing the back of the car, like on my knees on the seat, like just so uncomfortable. And that's when I was like, okay, whoa, like, this is not what I expected. I didn't expect to have no respite. Like, I had thought contractions. It didn't feel like contractions at all. It just felt like constant squeezing and pain and discomfort. And then we got to the hospital, and then they wanted to check me. Like, they wanted to do an internal check to see how dilated I was.
Oh,
And I couldn't
can I
even sit
just say,
down.
yes, can I just say, this is like actually, I have two moments. But this moment was one of the moments where I just was like, why? Why? When we arrived, and they just gave you so much pushback about this vaginal exam. And I just remember thinking, like, look at the woman. Like, she is having this baby any minute now. And like, why do you need to do a vaginal exam to see if she's in labor? Like, can't your eyes tell you that she's in labor right now? And I just remember you were so good. You really were like, I think you handled it very, very well, and you did so well with that, but I was a little bit like, "Oh my goodness, why are you offering this right now?" And I know you ended up being like, "Okay, like, it might be good to know, and I kinda do wanna know where I'm at," but I just remember how hard it was for you to get up on that bed, and I just thought, like, "Why do we need to be doing this at this point?"
And that is so validating, because it did feel like, oh my gosh, my body is telling me walk around. Like, and I couldn't stop walking. I was just pacing, pacing, pacing. I couldn't stand still. Like, it was the walking that was so regulating, and it was kind of keeping me calm. And I was like, okay, I can hold it barely, but like, I can kind of hold it together. And so I couldn't lie still for them to check. And I remember when they actually did check, I was only 4 centimeters dilated. I remember being so discouraged by that. I was like, oh my gosh, are you kidding? Like, I'm nowhere near 10 and I'm in so much pain. What are we going to do? Which is interesting. Actually, I never kind of put that together, that like, that actually wasn't super helpful for my like confidence. Once we were in the room, I remember feeling like, okay, we're here now. Like, we're here, which was good, but I can't really pace in like that, the hospital room, even though it was I remember really liking the room, because we dimmed all the lights, and we had that worship place that you had going on. That was so helpful. And I think we hopped right in the shower, and like, you had one like hose on my back and Mitch had the other one on my tummy, and I was like, oh, this is just really, like, I'm still so uncomfortable. And I didn't have my coping walking, so I wasn't walking anywhere. And I remember that was the moment that I remember swearing twice. Like, I dropped the F-bomb twice. I was like, okay, that's not me. Like, I'm not feeling myself. I'm feeling really down. And I was so discouraged at how much it hurt, and probably also how I didn't know how much more I was going to have to do. I was like, okay, am I nearly there? Could be, things can change so quickly. Am I not nearly there? Like, how long is this going to go for? And I remember just thinking, it's not worth it. Like, if I'm going to be sitting here raging at my poor husband who's just trying so hard to help me, and if I'm going to be swearing, like, I'm not gonna feel like myself. And I'm Kate. Like, this is not okay. So I think that was when I asked for the gas. I think I asked both of you, or maybe just Mitch, but I was like, are you going to be mad at me if I use pain relief? What the heck? But like, you know, if that was my labor brain talking, Mitch was like, no, of course not. Like, let's have the gas. Let's make you comfortable and happy. That's so worth it. Because I was pretty set on having a unmedicated birth, which, and like, I still, and this is something I really like talking to my friends who are pregnant. I love saying like, look, of course you want to know what you want, right? Like, you don't want to go into birth and go, I'm not totally sure what I would like to do. Like, I had sat down, I really thought about it. I really didn't want to have any interventions that weren't completely necessary. But in that moment, choosing to go for the gas, so I hopped straight in the birthing pool and they set up the gas, it really made the difference between me feeling like this is so hard, but I'm just on top of it, versus this is so hard and it's getting the better of me. Like, it's pushing me to feel more upset and discouraged than I wanted to. And so even though it still hurt so much in transition, even in the birthing pool, even with the gas, I could see that I had calmed down and I was still, you know, using all of my brain cells to keep it together. But I was in charge again, and I knew things really sped up after that. Like, maybe it was only maybe an hour and a half until I think I was ready to push. And the gas really just helped take the edge off so that I was emotionally in control again. But then when my body, and this was so cool, like my body just knew what to do. So good job me, good job Kate's body. But when I knew I wanted to push, and I did right away, it was like the constant pain left. And then it was like, I just really, like, my body started to push. I was like, oh, okay. Like, my body's ready to start actually delivering this baby. That was when I think that was when they took the gas away, and I was like, no, please don't. And they said, no, like, it would take longer if you're on the gas. And I kind of knew before that, like, it's really important. And your body is working to help you, right? Your body is not working against you. Those feelings of pushing and even the discomfort of the contractions that come at push time are really productive, and it's so important. And so I was just barely able to give up the gas, and then I was feeling everything right away, which I also liked about the gas. Like, the effects go away really fast. So I felt like I was back, you know, fully sharp, present very quickly. But I think it was around that time when I was ready to push that they wanted another internal exam. So they wanted me to get out of my comfy warm birthing pool, up on my back on the bed to check again. I think that's how it went. And they really wanted me to be on my back, which was also not convenient at all. But we got out and we did that. And I think I was 10 centimeters then, or something really close. There was no issues there. They said, go ahead. And I think it was around this point as well, because I had asked for no, is it called continuous monitoring, where they have the heart rate monitors on your tummy? And I remember being really clear, like, I don't want that. And actually it was my cousin who told me about that. And she said, you know, obviously the baby goes through different moments during the pregnancy, and during labor, and sometimes the heart rate will change, and that's normal. Like, that's not concerning all the time, but being able to hear those changes and the doctors being aware of all of those changes can make it quite stressful, and you can be nervous about that. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Like, I would be scary if I hear my baby's heart rate changing. Like, that might be an extra source of anxiety that I might not need. But I remember they really asked, could they check the baby's heartbeat? And I can't remember if I said no, but the nurse said, we need to check if the baby is still alive. And
oh my gosh,
was like, oh my goodness, that was the moment, and that you literally, you were the doula that I needed, because I remember you got in between me and this nurse. Like, so she said it, and immediately I was like, oh my gosh, please don't say that. Please don't use that word alive or anything like that. And I turned away, and I knew that you had come between me and her. And I don't know what you said, but she was nowhere to be seen for at least 20 minutes. Like, I just turned away, and you were there and said, like, no, it's fine. We've got you. It's fine. And then the next time a midwife tried to talk to me, you said, Kate, this is Marina, you know, the other midwife. like really clear that, like, this lady who had used this very triggering word in my very triggered state was not there, right? Like, and she had felt like a threat. This poor lady didn't realize what she'd done. She was fine.
No.
It was so confronting. It was so confronting.
It's so confronting. That was my other, remember before I said I had two moments where I was like, why? This was my other why moment. Like, why would you say, we need to make sure your baby's alive? Like, I just feel like that could have been delivered with a little bit more compassion, a little bit more tenderness, a little bit more. There's just a way to say things.
Pretty much any other way. I mean, it could have been worse, but that was really, and it was amazing how quickly like my body was so instinctive, right? Like so primal again, like I just fled, like I ran away in fright, like I, past tense flight, like I was gone. I was turning around in the birthing pool. I was away from this lady. And so then I had you, and that was such a relief, because I know Mitch he was there with me, but he was doing something different, right? Like he was making sure I was okay, and he was becoming a dad, and so many things. And that's when I was like, oh, this is what I need the doula for. She knew, like you knew exactly what I needed. And Mitch, I don't think he was right. He wasn't right next to me then. So if he had been, appropriately doing something else in that moment, then I would have just been stuck with this lady, and she probably, would have made me more nervous, and got me out of the bath where I was really happy and comfy. And so, it was so great to have two people there. Mitch could do the husband dad thing, and you could do the doula thing. And I know that he felt like that took a lot of pressure off him. When I told him about that afterwards, he was like, oh, good. Like, I'm so glad Andrew's there. So that was all kind of before I really started to push. And I think I only pushed for 40 minutes. I'm pretty sure that was the number, because it didn't feel like a long time at all. I remember pushing as hard as I could. Like I was like, okay, here we go. Like this really hurts. I'm really ready to be done. And I think in hindsight, I wonder if that contributed to the tear at all, because I was going as hard as I could, not pushing when I wasn't supposed to. But I think maybe for my next birth, I'll trust the contractions even more and go, okay, my body will get my baby out in the right time. Like I don't actually need to rush this part, even though it feels suddenly very intense and very like urgent. Like I think I want to even be more mindful of that coming up, hopefully with like lots more babies, hopefully, to go, okay, maybe this isn't this idea that something's about to go wrong. I think I was really worried about. And I actually had a friend have a stillbirth 6 months before I had Levi. But I was nervous. I was like, okay, like it does, it happens, right? Like beautiful women who have beautiful pregnancies, like birth is literally life and death, right? Like there's so much that can happen, and you want to be aware of what can happen. But like I remember that moment being like, okay, I'm about to meet my son. This is big, this is big, this is big. And I'm really hoping that with other pregnancies and other births, I can feel that. But I'm also really grateful for this moment. I'm grateful for the now, but not yet. Like my baby's here, but he's not here yet. I'm about to hold him. Because then when he did come out, and as soon as I held him, I didn't know that I was bleeding everywhere and nearly torn in half. And I just had him, and it was so wonderful. And Mitch was there right with me in the pool. And what I loved was that Mitch had motioned to you over my shoulder to say, film it, film this part, film this part. Watching this moment back afterwards, which I think we did at home, like a fair few days later, we watched me giving birth. Oh, it was so helpful. I was like, wow, look at my face. Look how scared I am. Look how painful this is. I can see it. How validating is that? And it was so healing to really see that from the outside. And for me to go, wow, good job, Kate, you did it. And then watching that relief when I held Levi right away. And I didn't have to let him go for ages. They were so kind. Like they, my placenta came out, I think the first post-birth contraction I had after. They did offer to give me that injection that helps it come out easier. But I said, no, let's wait. And placenta came out, no problem. And then they even let me hold him. I don't think they checked him until after they'd stitched me up, which did take a really long time. But I was able to breastfeed through all of that. And so we had just a really beautiful, like it really felt like more than a golden hour, because it was a long time, a golden time. It was just so lovely to have him, and they were so respectful. I think there was another doctor that came. I can't remember when she turned up, but I remember her being there when my placenta was coming out, and she was so calm and so kind. And so we talked through like the stitching, and then Levi was all checked and he was all beautiful. But then, and this was the other thing I was thinking of for future birds, because I've been drinking water the whole time, right? Like I was in labor, and then once I had him, I think I was drinking some more. But after I was all stitched up, and before they moved me out of the delivery room to my own room, I think they had a shift change. So a brand new midwife was there, and she said, oh, hi, how are you? Like, congratulations, you're a mom now. That's great. And she said, would you like to take a shower? And I said, no, I'm actually fine. Like, I know I was covered in birth, but I just, that's not what I needed at that moment. She said, no, like, I think it'd be really great to have a little rinse. Let dad hold the baby. Let you come with me. We'll have a shower. So I hobbled over, like, so many stitches, right? Like I don't know how many there were, but it was a bit of a horror show down there. But I was all stitched up, and she walked me over to the shower. She turned the shower on, and then I think she must have said, I'll be back in a minute, because I was by myself in the shower. And then I started feeling really dizzy, and I sat down on the toilet and I fainted. And Mitch looked over, because a machine had started going off, like just a random machine in the room, and he was nowhere near the bathroom. but he looked up to see the machine, and then he could see me slumped completely unconscious on the toilet, like, behind this machine. And he was, poor Mitch, he's holding Levi, and he was like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with my wife? Like, is she okay? And so then he buzzed. Luckily there's, buzzing things all over the hospital room. And then about 7 midwives ran in, and all I remember was hearing, Catherine, Catherine, wake up, Catherine. And I was like, who is Catherine? Poor thing, she must be in a really bad way. And I was like, oh, I'm Catherine, that's my real name, that's me. And I woke up, and they were like, oh my gosh, and they were so worried. I actually felt fine. I was probably also extremely tired, but I genuinely had fainted. I had not intended to sit down on my fresh stitches. I had not intended to not finish my shower. And so then they worked out I was super dehydrated, and they put a little IV drip in me, which was kind of annoying because you're kind of hauling yourself in and out of bed a lot when you just had a baby. Every time you get out of bed, you're pressing both hands down on the bed to lever yourself up. You have to be so careful. And so that really hurt every time I leaned on my hand. I could kind of feel the IV in my hand. But they were like, whoa, we really needed to give you some more fluid. Probably a combination of the gas and being up all night and, just trying to be present with your baby. Like, I also think it was being, kind of pushed to get up and at them before I was ready. And I guess part of that is just being in a hospital, like a home birth is really different. There's no shift change on the nurses. There's no, oh, we're expecting you to come out of the room at this time, which I think is what she was trying to do, right? Like, she was trying to get me ready to move. But they were really, really kind. And I remember they wheeled me out on my whole bed. Like, they said, normally we would pop you in a wheelchair, but you're on the bed right now. Let's just take you. And then, it was pretty early in the morning when we had Levi. I think it was 5:42. And so by the time I'd been all stitched up and I'd fainted and woken up, well, that was about 9, which was kind of nice because 9 a.m., like, our friends and family were kind of waking up. My parents were in New Zealand, so they were just awake by that time. And we got to spend the whole day, like, calling people and FaceTiming and texting and saying, we did it, we have a baby now. Like, that was actually really lovely. And the hospital were really chill. Like, once we had Levi, they just tucked us up in this room, and they sent someone to check on us kind of every few hours, and they were so great. They would always give him a really good swaddle, really, really tight and cozy. And he just loved that. He was so happy. And so, we were just able to kind of be together and eat. I remember eating a lot, and then Levi wanted to eat a lot, so we did that too. And I was buzzing for a midwife to come and help me breastfeed every feed because it was really, really hard to get him to latch at the beginning. And, I don't know what I was doing. He definitely didn't know what he was doing, and that's fine because he's a baby. But it was really nice to have that, like, on-call support. But then they left us alone, right? I think that was kind of the nice thing about the busy hospital. They weren't hovering. They weren't, offering us anything more than what we asked for. So we had a really beautiful day. And then at some point in the day, they had to move us into a shared room, which was really tough. Like, I remember feeling like, okay, this is not how I wanted my postpartum to go. Like, I didn't want to have to be worried about my crying baby waking up this one other lady and her crying baby. But we got through the night there. And then the next morning, 9 a.m., so Levi was like 30 hours old, they were like, oh, so we're going home today, right? Like let me know what time you're ready to go home. And I remember saying, like, I'm actually not ready to go home. And I was really clear. I said, I'm still in pain. I'm buzzing for help every breastfeed. Like, I'm not comfortable going home. And the nurse, who probably was extremely overrun and tired, but she just said, like, look, you're going to be in pain here or at home. And, we'll send a midwife to check on you at home. So there's people waiting for your bed. So out you go. And when she
love that.
I was so
So
upset.
heavy.
I remember just crying to Mitchell. I was like, what are we doing? Like, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. But, like, what are we doing? And he was like, honey, like, it's tough being in a shared room. And I was like, yes, you're right. And he said, and we haven't, we're going home to someone who knows us, our own bed. No one's going to wake us up. No one's going to wake him up. Like, it's just going to be us at home. And so Mitch was so kind, and he really went above and beyond to help me get home really before I was ready. And I think that's the other thing that I would be mindful of next time. If that same scenario comes up again, I would say, look, thank you so much, but as a taxpayer, I'm comfortable staying in this room, even if it's a public hospital, until I'm ready to go. Thank you.
Yeah, as a taxpayer, like, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that was really tough. So and I think and I'm grateful because I did try to stand my ground. I genuinely explained to her what was going on. And in the end, we decided that it would be best for our family as overall to go. Mitch was pretty ready to get out of the shared room. Poor thing, he had to sleep in my hospital bed with me for the whole night. So he was just exhausted, and he knew that he could do a better job of taking care of me. at home, you know, with all our own snacks and our own microwave and things like that. So he was really ready to do whatever it took to get me home, make me comfortable, which was really, really kind of him. But yeah, I think, yeah, it's a real balance, you know, of going, okay, this is the birth and postpartum that I want, and this is the reality of birth and postpartum. Like, obviously, didn't want to tear, I didn't want to faint, I didn't want to be pushed out of the hospital after one night, but being able to kind of hold those things and acknowledge that they were hard, and still like gently walk through them with the support of my chosen village was really, really good. And we had kind of worked out what were the non-negotiables before, and a big thing was food. Like, we had done a lot of research into postpartum nutrition. We're really intentional with what we eat anyway. And so I felt like those were areas that I was okay to kind of absorb the pain of and the shock of, because I had worked out, okay, what are my non-negotiables and how can I work on those? So we had our like food really intentional, really planned out. We were also really intentional about no visitors, which I loved. Like, oh my gosh, as an introvert, that's all I wanted. I just wanted to go home and breastfeed on command and like not worry about anyone coming over. I didn't want to host anyone. I didn't want to stress about that. And so we ended up having family in the first month, but I didn't leave the house for the month except for appointments with Levi, and we didn't have any friends over for that first month, which was really, really great. Like, it was so nice to go, okay, we're going home from the hospital to our little love nest sanctuary that we have created and put boundaries in for. And it was just really special. It was like nesting all over again, you know. Once you bring the baby home, you kind of work out where everything's going to go again, because you haven't really thought about it in the way that your baby really needs, because you're not your baby. So yeah, so that was really nice. And so then I think we had all of your postpartum doula visits. So in the first 10 days, like definitely in the first 2 weeks, like I think we had 4 postpartum visits with you, and they were all done. And it was 10 days. That was the end of it, because we did our little postpartum photo shoot, well, newborn photo shoot, not postpartum photo shoot, newborn photo shoot with you and Levi. And he was 10 days old when we did that, which is awesome. So yeah, it was lovely. It was really great. And I remember just feeling so like, oh my gosh, I've never felt so content in my life than being home with my newborn, like for that season. It's like, nothing's more important than this. I don't want to be doing anything else. I'm not looking forward to the next thing. I'm just here with you. And if I've got you, then I've got everything I want. It was so beautiful. And I loved having just that whole month of going, I'm not multitasking. I'm not doing anything else. I tried to do the I don't know if there's a name for it, but 5 days in bed, 5 days on the bed, 5 days near the bed. So I
Yeah.
basically stayed in bed for 2 weeks. Oh, and that was so fantastic. Like, I remember 2 weeks on the dot, I got up and I was like, oh, I feel like I did before I got pregnant. Like, not even like the discomfort of being pregnant, which I kind of gotten used to at the end, but I felt so healed, and I didn't have any like postpartum recovery issues at all, despite having, 101 stitches, or that's what it felt like. Like, I was so grateful to have rested so hard, because then I
Yeah.
felt like my body put itself back together, with the good food and the rest and lying down as much as possible. Like, it was so helpful. And I felt like part of Levi and I's really awesome breastfeeding story was that we were just so in sync right from the beginning, because we weren't out and about a bunch. We were at home for the
Yeah.
first 4 weeks together, so there wasn't a bunch of neon lights and people walking past, and I was able to really like learn his cues and respond to him, and it was very calm. And so he and I felt so tight. We felt like a real unit by the time we were going out and about. We had really taken the time to build that bond, and then we took it into the outside world, which was really cool. And that's a very like Chinese confinement thing to do. I think sometimes it even goes as long as 3 months to stay home and
Yeah.
be cared for and pampered and protected, which is just beautiful. Like, I just think in the West, we don't really see postpartum like that. We don't see it as, sacred, and that the
Mm.
mum needs a lot of love to kind of make up for the love she's putting out. Like, you've never had to care for something so much in the way that you have to care for a newborn. And so it was so special to like, yeah, be at home with our snacks. And I remember Mitch got me a DIY shellac kit so I could do my nails, and it took all day with a newborn. But I remember being like, this is lovely. All my photos of me and my newborn have nice nails because I do them myself now at home. Like, all those little things that like the self-care that actually matters to you. Like, it was just so valuable. It was so nice to have that golden month. It felt like we had the golden hour and we had the golden month to
Oh.
yeah hang out. It was so great.
So precious. So, so precious. It's so true that we don't really honor and respect the postpartum period in our culture. It's really often viewed as like something to be rushed, and we praise women for bouncing back and getting back
Oh,
to the normal
yes.
routine. It's so it's sad because like what you described about doing the 5 days in bed, 5 days on the bed, 5 days around the bed, like it really has such benefits, and even what you were explaining about how you just felt so energized and so refreshed after like such a short period of time. Like it's only 2 weeks and you already felt so much like yourself. I just think that's just the power of rest, and it should be a no-brainer, but unfortunately, it's really not.
Yeah, it's so true, and I think and I even noticed this the older I got as a parent and the older Levi I got, you get a lot of praise for not acknowledging your needs or your baby's needs. Like, I remember
Yes.
skipping nap time very rarely, but, we'd be out and about, and I'd say, "Oh, normally it's nap time, but we're here." People go, "Good job, you. Good job for skipping the nap," or, like, breastfeeding on the go, they're like, "Yeah, that's right, like, you get out there." But when you say, "Oh, sorry, I'm not going because he needs a nap," or "Sorry, I'm breastfeeding right now, I can't do that," you don't get a lot of encouragement for that, really. They go,
Yeah.
"Oh, okay, all right, sure." That it's tolerated, you're not shamed for it, but like a lot of
Yeah.
get at, "Oh, you're at church that same week you gave birth, great job," or, "Oh, come to Christmas, it'll be so great," like all of those things. And yeah, it is amazing. And I know everyone is so different. So like my love language as an introvert is home alone. That's gold standard for me. I love that. Or home with my people, right? Mitch and Levi are not, they're not counted in alone. But like I had another friend who said that she was crazy after, being home all by herself. And so she loved going out and about. And I think it's so important to just know to actually ask yourself what you want to do, because if mom's not happy, it's really hard for anyone else to be happy. And
Yeah.
so much of maternal and infant health is like almost synonymous, right? Like, and I really found that at Tresillian. So we went to Tresillian for Levi's sleep at 5.5 months and again at 10 months. And both times they were really not that interested in him. They were way more interested in how I was going and how my mental health was. And they checked in on me every day before they checked in on him. They said, "Okay, mom, how's your mental health today? How hopeful are we feeling? How empowered are we feeling? Like, let's chat about that." Because they knew if mum's okay, baby will most of the time be fine. Barring a real medical issue. If
Yeah.
mum is handling it, if she's feeling loved and supported and safe, then the baby will pick up on all those cues and will feel the overflow of the love. Like, there won't be that scarcity mindset of like, "Oh, I want
Mm.
to take care of you, but I can't." Like, and they, will write a lot of the things out. A lot of the things I didn't even realize, but you just have to kind of hold them with love and wait. All the sleep regressions, all those, challenges with the breastfeeding sometimes and those hiccups, like a lot of it is waiting and loving and being present, going, "Levi, I can't fix it, but I'm here and I love you still. And I love you when you're mad and I love you when you're sad and I love you when you're happy too." And yeah, so much of that I think is really overlooked in the West. Like, we focus on what mums are doing rather than what they're not doing. And a lot of the time we should not be, getting up and running around and, doing the dishes in those first 2 weeks. Like, and I think even
Yeah.
next time I'm going to go for disposable plates. I'm even more okay with like letting go with those things. And I'm really grateful that I stayed in bed, so I couldn't see the state of the kitchen. Mitch just brought me my food and then he took my plates away. So I didn't know what the rest of the house looked like. And that was really protective. Like, and I was really, really grateful that I had you and Mitch to do that. I remember most of the times when you came over, I'm sure you just cleaned the kitchen the whole time because it was shocking. But I remember being really okay with that. I was like, I've counted the cost. I want to be here with my baby. I want to be resting in bed. I know there'll be time to do the dishes. And there
Yeah.
is, even in those first few months, I was like, "Oh my gosh, will I ever get on top of the laundry? Will I ever get back to reading my Bible every day? Will I ever get back to, going to Zumba? Like, is that ever happening?" And it did, but I
Yeah.
really gave myself permission for it to not happen right away. And then when it did come, I wasn't like, "Finally." I was like, "Oh, how wonderful. I get to go to Zumba today," or whatever. So
Yeah.
that was really nice. But I think I really was able to set that tone from this postpartum confinement thing that I learned about from Chinese culture. So thank you so much, Taylor R, for that YouTube series. But um, yeah, it was amazing how much that can set the tone for you as a parent. Your philosophy of parenting, your theology
Yeah.
of being a mom, all of that stuff. It's so interesting.
It's so true. It's so true. Yeah. It's huge.
Mm,
Yeah. And I think like it's so significant the link between maternal mental health and maternal health in general and then
Mm.
the infant. Like, I would love to do research into that because I'm sure it would be fascinating. And yeah, it really is true that, like, when the mum is taken care of, when she's thriving, when she's happy, you really do see a really positive flow-on effect, on the rest of the family. And yeah, as I
Mm.
said, like, I'd love to research it because it's not something that I've spent a lot of time really researching that particular thing, but certainly, like, I have some good anecdotal evidence of it just from what I've seen in my own experience, like, supporting women and working with families. Like, it's a very, very close link between how is mum doing and then how is the rest of the family doing.
Yeah, and I was really surprised at how much the public health system knew that was true. Like I'd read quite a few books about postpartum and there was one great book that you lent me. What was that one called? And it started with like half the book was like testimonies of really positive, beautiful birth stories. I'll have to find out what that one was. But you lent
Oh,
it to
it
me
would
and it
have
was
been Ina May's Guide to
Ina
Childbirth.
May. Oh, that was amazing. And I remember reading that and going, oh my gosh, I can see that, like, sometimes the medical system can get in the way of a beautiful birth, right? Like they can jump in too quickly or they can do things that you're not happy with. And so I remember being like, okay, I need to make sure I'm gonna fight for my mental health. I'm gonna fight for some of these open-handed preferences. Obviously, there's a medical issue, like I'm going to trust in medical professionals, but as far as I can, I want to let my body do its thing. But I remember being so impressed by, and maybe this is just Blacktown Hospital, but the midwives did a lot of mental health checkups on me, and they wanted to know not just how I was going medically, but how I was going, yeah, emotionally, socially. They wanted to make sure we had support, like, and at Tresillian, oh, they were just amazing. That's all I wanted to know. And so I was really surprised at how up to date they were with the research, the latest research that talks about how important it is, for moms to be thriving. Like you said, and even that word thriving, I love that because it's so true that you can get in a state of survival. You can go, okay, my baby is, hungry, feels like all the time, and they're not sleeping any of the time. And so it's so easily
Mm,
brought back to those really basic physiological needs of shelter, eating, sleeping.
yeah,
It's so basic. And so to look at that not as, well, surviving is okay, but to go, oh my goodness, we really could be thriving even here. What would it take to be thriving? And I think the
yeah,
trouble is that that's a little bit different for everybody. Like it's staying home for a month would have made some of my friends not thrive, but it made
yeah.
me thrive. And I think, and one thing that you did that was so helpful in one of our preparation sessions was you got Mitch and I to do the love languages quiz. And I found that so helpful because I didn't realize that over the course of my like adult life and my marriage, my love languages had really changed. And I realized that acts of service in particular were really important to me. And I found that really helpful, even in caring for myself, because I went, okay, Levi's asleep now. I have a precious half an hour to myself. What am I going to do? And sometimes that meant having a nap, but sometimes that meant actually doing an act of service for myself. I was like, the most loving thing I can do for myself now, for my mental health, is the dishes. If I can clean the kitchen and just lose myself in, the soapiness and the tea towels and cleaning things, I will feel better. But I would never have thought like that, before I knew that about myself. I knew what would make me feel loved, and I could do that for me. And I think it's so important for, like, dads and partners and even older kids to think that, like, what makes mummy really happy. Like I hope Levi will know, oh, mum loves it when I give her a hug. So I'm hoping when I have more
Oh,
babies, he'll go, oh, mum, quick, here's a hug, you look like you need a hug. And oh, Mitch will
oh.
go, okay, mum loves Earl Grey tea with almond milk, I will go make her an Earl Grey tea with almond milk. There's like so many specific practical things that we can do that and nothing can fix mental health. It's not as easy as that, but there's so many little things, 1% improvements that we can make that can help mums think less about surviving and more about, oh, how can I be thriving right now? How could this
Yeah.
be the happiest time of my life and not a time that I'm enduring and waiting out and hoping for something different? Like, it's such a different mindset. But it's really, yeah, it's a really cool thought experiment to think about.
That's so cool. It's so cool. It's so true. It's about those little 1% improvements because often you can't
Mm,
fix everything all at once. Like, that's just not how things work. It's just all about the little tiny things that you can do, and you chip away at things slowly, and then over time, it makes a big difference when it's all added together. And
yeah.
yeah, it's so important having, I guess, an understanding before postpartum about, like, okay, what are my non-negotiables? What really does make me thrive as a person? How can I best support my partner as they go through this too? Like, what are the things for us? Because there is no formula. And it's just everyone's different and everyone needs to do what works for them. And yeah, yeah, it's so important.
Yeah, and I think the really cool part about hanging out with you before was how intentional we got to be about that. Like, I think, I mean, there's an element of you just need to be, reactive to what your baby's, the vibes your baby is putting down. You have to just kind of be ready to go, okay, what's happening today? But there is an element of like, well, yeah, how can I intentionally make space for the things that really fill my cup? And I remember for me for a long time, the non-negotiables were reading my Bible and yoga, and I think that was actually it. Like, if those two things happened in the day, then that day was a success. Even if the kitchen looked like a bomb and hit it, even if I didn't wash anything, even if Levi didn't sleep all day, if I had done those two things, I knew I would be okay. And so I think, yeah, there's an element of you can be intentional, and an element, this is the classic we were talking about before, two things being true. Being intentional is so worth it, and also having the space to let things happen the way they're going to happen is so worth it as well. Having too many expectations can be really oppressive, but there's a really sweet balance of going, okay, I've picked my two things that I love, a shower every day and a cup of tea every day or whatever it is, and then going, okay, and the rest, I'm just going to leave it up to God. God's got it,
Yeah.
and everything will be okay.
I love that. Amen, sister. I feel like it's probably also worth mentioning. So obviously Kate is a Christian, I'm a Christian, and so that was a really special part of working with Kate. And I work with
Mm.
like seriously, I work with families that come from all different backgrounds and all different belief systems and love supporting people from all different walks of life. But it definitely is really special when there is that like shared faith. And I just feel like it adds a really beautiful layer of like depth to the relationship that you have when somebody is yeah, they just kind of hold the same belief system as you. And so, although, yeah, I do work with all different people and all different families. I think if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, is it worth like trying to find a doula that has got a similar belief system? Sometimes it can be a really beautiful relationship without necessarily having those things in common. But if there is someone that you can kind of share that belief system with, if it's really important to you, then I feel like there's just nothing better than that. Like that's just the gold standard when you do kind of see eye to eye in that sense as well, and you're just on the same page. I remember a really beautiful moment from your birth, Kate, was when we had arrived at the hospital and that cervical examination had been done, and they were like, "Yep, feels like you're 4 centimeters." And although it's so annoying, like side note. The thing with cervical examinations is that so many people have this misconception that let's use 5 just for easy numbers. Let's say they go, okay, I'm 5 centimeters and oh my goodness, I've been in labor already for 20 hours and I'm only 5 centimeters, and 5 centimeters is halfway to 10. So that means it's going to be another 20 hours before I'm at 10 and I'm pushing. But it's not like that. And often you can go from I don't know, 0 to 5 in however long, let's say the 20 hours. And then you might do the next 5 to 10 or so really, really quickly, but also you might not do it really quickly. And so there's this annoying thing about vaginal exams where they really oftentimes aren't that helpful. And there's totally a place for them. But I think this moment where they were like, yep, you're 4 centimeters, it felt a little bit discouraging to you as you had spoke about before. And it's so funny because you were literally pushing that baby out so soon after you were 4 centimeters. So it's such a
That's
good
so true.
example of
Yeah.
that being true. But I do remember when you were feeling a little bit discouraged and you were like, gosh, I just want to pace the room and how am I going to get comfortable? There was such a beautiful moment where I remember saying, okay, we'll get you in the shower. Let's just put you in a nice little warm bubble of water and the water's going to help you feel better. Let's do that. And you were feeling really overwhelmed. And I remember Mitch and I literally singing to you and with you. And we were like singing, I can't remember what song it was. It was like some really beautiful worship song or some Christian song. I don't know. And it was just so beautiful, like watching how much that just helped you and you just relaxed and you just found this new confidence in yourself all of a sudden. And it was just so special. I think about that moment all the time and I'm like, wow, how beautiful was it that yeah, just how beautiful was that?
That is so cool. And I remember really specifically as well that song Gyra by Elevation Worship playing when you did my postpartum facial. Like, honestly, worth it to have a doula just for the postpartum facial.
Yes.
And I remember just being like, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful. And even like, and this is obviously a side note from my personal journey as a Christian, but like walking through this new season with Jesus, like absolutely life changing. To go, oh my gosh, you loved me before. and you love me now and you've gone ahead of me. Like, and I think about that story of the footprints in the sand all the time, that like you look back on your life and sometimes there's two sets of footprints, you're walking next to Jesus and his and yours, and then sometimes there's one set of footprints, but it's not you on your own, it's him carrying you. And I have just felt that time and time again. And I remember that really starting in labor. Like I remember calling out Jesus, help, like audibly in front of these, what I'm assuming were secular nurses. I remember being like, oh, they're going to think I'm really weird. I don't care because I know Jesus is going to help me. And he did, because it was fine and everything was great in the end. But it was so cool to grow as a Christian through being a mum. I didn't even think that would, I just assumed that being a mum would be being a mum, but it really has, yeah, it just helps you grow so much. And being able to share that with you and not having to justify why I wanted worship music on, or, why I wanted prayer, or anything like that. Like that was so special to go, yeah, and she fully just understands what I want. She gets it. And I felt like you really took the time to understand what was important to me as well. You wanted to know my love languages, Mitch's love languages, and you asked about, do you want me to be firm with you in labor? Do you need me to tell you to kind of, be brave and keep going, or do you need me to be kind and gentle? And so it was so nice. Like it really felt like a really like customized kind of service, because you knew what was important to me and you had taken the time to learn that. And those visits that we did before we had Levi were so helpful. I felt like, yeah, you coming to our house was really special. So, you knew your way around. Like we didn't need to show you anything. Like it was really cool.
Oh, so cool, Kate. So, so cool. Do you feel like there was, if you had to pick what the best thing was about having had a doula, do you feel like you could pick one thing, or is that just impossible?
I thought, no, oh, no, I feel like there's just too many things.
The first thing was the protection. I really felt protected in labor, right? And like when that midwife said that thing that made me so scared about, is your baby, I want to check your baby's alive, like having you there to like protect me was so powerful. The other thing that was so special was you coming over with this absolute energy of just love and unconditional acceptance. Like you weren't like sussing out, oh, this is a new side of Kate I haven't seen. You're like, Kate, you're doing amazing. You're doing great. And I remember a few times falling asleep before you left, and you would just go, because you weren't here for you were here for me. And when I was okay, that was all that you were here for. So that was so beautiful. So I think those are actually the two things about having a doula that were the best. Like I felt like this idea of how it can feel to be loved, like in a postpartum world, was so clear from you. And I've really been able to kind of show that to my friends since they've had babies now. I feel like, I kind of know how to make you feel loved, or at least I know it made me feel loved. And I feel like I have a few more tools in my tool belt to, really care for other mums, which is a big part of being a mum, is your mum drive and working out how to support each other. So I feel like I really learned that from you. So thank you. That was the best. I loved that.
Oh, you're the best. All right. And my last question is, what advice would you give to a mum who's like, let's say it's her first baby, she's got all of this in front of her. What would you tell her?
Yeah, I think I would say that taking the time to get to know what you need will be the best investment, right? Like there's obviously 1,001 things that you can do, and your baby will need 1,001 things it'll feel like. But if the time before you have a baby is a really, really special time to go, okay, what's most important to me and my family? And being really clear on those things will help you decide on your priorities on any given day. And, your values and your priorities will change as time goes on, but a lot of them will stay the same. If you really value your relationship with your husband, then taking some time to hang out with your husband. So I think that would be my main piece of advice. Like, take some time, work out what's important to you, and then you can take that into whatever situation. And I should say, my other thing is really actually asking for help. I think I did a lot of the internet research thing, which was really useful. I feel like I had a really good sense, because the internet is an absolute wealth of information of, different like sleep techniques, feeding things. I felt really informed, but it was when I really spoke to someone that I got the most useful help. So we went to a breastfeeding consultant, and so she saw me feed and she gave me specific advice and encouragement. And we went to Tresillian for sleep, and they told us some really helpful strategies. So I think that was the biggest thing. Like, of course research is useful, but actually talking to a medical professional or a more experienced mum that you trust, or your own mum, or whoever it is, or your doula, like that was when I found the most support. just sharing what was going on. Sometimes people pick up on things that you've missed. You know, you think it's normal. You know, when Levi was waking up every hour or two at 5 months, I thought that was normal. And I went to Tricilia and they said, oh, I actually think he's overtired. I actually think he needs more sleep and we can work on that together. And then he started having these beautiful long stretches of sleep. Like, it's sharing things with people that you love and trust is so important, but also knowing what's important to you is so important. So I think those are my two main things. And I'm really grateful to have been able to do both of those things with you, actually. That was really cool as well.
Oh, so good, Kate. It's so true. And I think asking for help is probably the hardest thing. Like, it's the thing that you need to do, but it's the hardest thing to do. So it's so cool that you call that out, because I think it's really important. And most of us learn to ask for help when we are thrown into parenthood and we have no choice.
That's so true. And what a cool thing that kids teach you, you know, they teach you to just acknowledge that no man is an island and we were meant to do this together anyway. It's so great.
Yes, I love that. Oh, Kate, thank you so much for your time and for
It was
sharing
so
all of
nice.
your stories. It was so beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much. It's so nice to chat and to go back to this beautiful season and to look back on it. And that was another thing that I loved on top of all these many things we've already talked about. I love looking back on my beautiful birth and going, I tore and I had a beautiful birth. And I fainted and I had a really beautiful birth. And such a big part of that was you being there to just be like the underpinning thing to, you know, what Mitch and I wanted to do with our family. Like, it was just so awesome. So thank you for helping us have the birth and the recovery that we really want to have, because we got it and it was beautiful. So thank you. It's really fun to talk to you again and to go back to that really special time together. It was really nice.
Thanks for joining me today. Check back in for my next episode, where I'll be interviewing Karen McClay, who is a midwife and the owner and director of one of Australia's most prominent birth courses, Calm Birth. Can't wait to share that conversation with you. See you again soon.